Okay, at this point in time, we are recording tonight's session. I want to welcome all of you here tonight to our cooperative education learning session. I do have Miss Jennifer Strachura with us. She is the assistant vocational director here at BayPath. I know Mr. Tripp is on the call, but he's on special assignment somewhere else tonight. But he can chime in if we do have a question, and he can actually type in that in the chat response. So we want to thank you all for being with us. We do think that cooperative education is a very important part at BayPath. We think it's a very important part of our overall growth, and we want our students to experience everything that there is in the work world, and we want to prepare them for all that as well. And tonight, we're going to have an overview of what that looks like. So sit back. I ask you to please hold off on your questions until Mr. Chura is done with her presentation. And then we'll answer as many as we can, and we'll follow up together. So at this point in time, I am going to introduce Mr. Chura, the Assistant Vocational Director of BayPath. So thank you very much.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm so happy to have you all here. I'm really excited to talk about co-op. We are at almost the second quarter here of the year, and as such, juniors become eligible at the end of that second quarter, which is just about the beginning of February when they'll be able to start going out onto co-op. So some things to get prepared for co-op participation. You need to have at least 1.5 years in the career area that you're assigned to. So if you transferred in, we need to run that through the guidance counselor and just see how much learning you have underneath your belt. And that usually does equate to about the end of quarter 2 in junior year. As such, we also have some grade requirements, and that's just so that you're, understanding the importance of your academics as well as your vocation. So for shop and related, an 80 or above is the requirement, and academics is a 70 or better for all of your academics, including your year-to-date grade, not just the quarter grade. Then there are a few other factors that we consider when we're going to place you out. It includes attendance, no more than 3 unexcused absences or tardies for a quarter. Obviously, if there are some excused, we do take things into consideration, and we will take a look at that. So not to worry about that at all. When we talk about other academic requirements, we talk about MCAS and needing to make sure that the students have passed the MCAS exam before they're getting placed out on cooperative education. They need to also have the shop instructors, and both the related and the shop. They need to have their endorsement to be placed out into the industry as well. We need to have guidance counselor approval, and they're just meeting, checking to make sure that they've met that 1.5 year requirement, that they're earning all of the proper credits for promotion. And another thing that's really important is a good discipline record. So those are some really big requirements as we're heading into this. So we've got a little bit of time before we reach the end of the quarter. If we're struggling with any of those and have to have some conversations, I'm more than willing to meet with students and help get them the help that they need so that they can make those requirements for the end of the quarter. Another thing that they need to have, or students you would need to have, are your resume. Your resume needs to be ready. Some of you should have already worked on that in your related area. If you haven't and you need assistance with that, again, you can reach out to me. We will work together. We'll get you there. Reference page, at least 3 references. Those can include your shop instructors. If you don't have any work experience anywhere else with any part-time jobs or anything, there are several other references that I can provide to you if you're really struggling with who to get a reference from. Your OSHA certificate. Most of you should have already passed your OSHA as part of being in the shop. Many of you do that in your sophomore year, so we should have your OSHA on file. That should not be a problem. If for some reason you came in late and you haven't completed your OSHA, please let me know that as well. We'll work on getting that taken care of for you so you'll be prepared to go out into co-op. For culinary specific students, ServSafe certification is another one that we're looking for when we're putting you out onto cooperative education. Many of those culinary industries are going to be looking for that certification as well. You'll also need my endorsement indicating that I feel like you're ready to be placed out on co-op. Usually if all of those other requirements met, I don't have any holdup with you. We get you out there, but I do need to sign off on placing you out there. There are some things that an employer needs to agree to when we're talking about getting you out onto co-op. So while we say primarily looking for a co-op job is on you, unless I do have some employers, there are some things that that employer will need to agree to. So I will help guide those conversations with that employer. But if you're reaching out to someone, some things to be aware of is the co-op needs to agree to what we refer to as a query check. That's a background check. Anybody that works one-on-one with students needs to have that done in an educational environment, and cooperative education is no different. It is still an educational environment, and we are still dealing with minor students. So we make sure that we have a query check for anyone that would be one-on-one with that student when they're placed. They need to agree to the 30 hours every other week, which is a really important factor. They have to have that 30 hours available for you every other week. If you can't make the 30 hours, it does not qualify as co-op, and you would need to come back in from co-op. Things that might change that: you go on a field trip with your shop for some reason and you've arranged that with your co-op employer. If the co-op employer is fine with you having that day off and you're coming into school, that counts as a day of work. That counts as 6 hours of your work week. Other things that might impact that: if you have an absence, sure, that's going to impact that, and you'll just need to make up your work for your shop if you were as if you were an absent from the shop setting. The other thing is, when that happens, you need to indicate those things in your time card. That's a requirement once you're placed. With the large numbers of students that are out on cooperative education, it becomes very difficult for me to keep track of every single student and the activities that they've had during that week. So it's vital that you put that in. If you happen to miss it and you didn't put it into the comments for me, I will reject that back to you and give you the opportunity. I'll explain why I've rejected that back to you. The employer will need to grade you on that time card that I'm referencing. So they need to agree that they're going to provide you with a grade, because that does replace your shop grade. Your co-op grade now becomes your shop grade. They need to agree to follow all child labor laws. There are some exceptions when it comes to cooperative education students because of the experience that you are receiving through the vocational setting. All of that will be provided to parents, students, as well as employers, so that you'll have a clear understanding of what those child labor laws are. One of the critical components would be making sure that you're not working more than 9 hours a day. That's a Massachusetts state law, that you cannot work more than 9 hours in a day, that you are not working more than 6 days a week, and that you're not working any more than 48 hours in a week. So it's a minimum of 30 with a maximum of 48 while you're under 18 years of age. They need to agree from an employer standpoint to pay at least the minimum wage. Currently, we have students that are making on average $16.67 per hour, and it goes upwards of $25 an hour currently. So there's a great opportunity depending on the employer there. They need to be able to provide the student with a learning environment. It's not just, great, I've got somebody here, they're cheap labor, I'm going to put them to work and off they go. It is intended to be a learning environment. This is an extension of our related theory classrooms and an extension of our shops. So this needs to be a learning experience, as well as somebody who's an employee for that particular employer. Let's see. When we talk about those child labor laws, again, we're talking about no earlier than 6 a.m. start time, no later than 10 p.m. end time, in terms of the hours during the day that they can work. I will say I do not have a requirement of it being only Monday through Friday. We recognize that there are several industries that we have career areas here at the school for, which would and have weekend work. So healthcare is one of those industries. Culinary is another industry. Some of the manufacturing work 7 days a week. Students aren't expected to work 7 days a week, but there may be weekends as part of their schedule. The main thing is that 30-hour requirement, because that's what DESE is expecting them to have for education. Once they're placed on student, there are some requirements that still exist. They need to maintain all of that criteria that got them out onto co-op. So that's the grading, the attendance, and the discipline, as well as they need to maintain a weekly time card. That time card must be turned in no later than the first day back for academics. So it should be Monday, but if we had a holiday on a Monday, it would be the Tuesday. They should have that in. My rule of thumb is typically when you end your work week, if it's on a Friday after you're done work, you get that time card in. It's not a worry. You've got it taken care of. We don't have to worry about that. If your weekend's on a Saturday, same thing. End of shift, put all those hours in, get that submitted, get that taken care of for us. And then you don't have to think about that until the next work week. If for some reason there's an absence from work, you need to make sure that you notify the employer first and foremost per whatever their call-in policy is. If you are out, you also need to notify our main office here at the school. So when that happens, you have 2 notification processes that need to be followed, just so that we are aware that you're not on the job site. If you're coming in for, like I said, a field trip or a guest speaker that's related to your shop and you've made those arrangements with your employer, you would then go ahead and notify me that you're going to be in school. Again, that's for head counts, knowing who's in the school in case there were any type of an emergency, then we know where students are at a given time. Let's see, if for some reason there is some sort of an injury that's going to prevent you from going to work, I need to be provided with that notification that you have an injury that's preventing you from going to work, and you should report to school as long as it's something you can still manage, like in an academic setting. We will provide you with that missed work, but if you're not able to do the work and not able to participate in the shop, we will make sure that you have accommodations to get work from the school and get that made up. If you're getting cleared to return to work, I need to know that before you return to work, and I'll need to be provided with a physician's note indicating such. That's critical so that we're ensuring that no further injury is occurring. And that's not just a work injury. We've had several. I was riding a bicycle or I was skateboarding and I fell and I broke my leg. So when those things happen, we need to make sure that we have those clearance notes allowing you to go back to work. One of the things that I was asked previously too, what types of protections do we put in place for these students? So I failed to mention, as part of the co-op requirement, is a site visit. So I go out to these sites and work with the employers, understand what the setting is that the student's going to be involved in, whether it's an inside setting, an outside setting. Understand what policies they have in place with regard to employee handbooks or, toolbox talks, as some of the trades might have on a weekly basis where they go over certain items. The instructions I do provide to every single student is, if for some reason you're uncomfortable, they're asking you to do something that based on your training is not the safe way to do something. If there's any kind of harassment, things that make you uncomfortable, the way that people are talking to you, I want that brought to my attention immediately. Don't wait until you come back into school. Send me an email, notify me right away so that I can get right with that employer. And that's the instruction that I give as I'm sending you out, because we're putting you out into the work world, but at the same time, you're still students and we still have a responsibility for your care and your safety. So that is first and foremost for me. If anything should occur that makes you feel uncomfortable, as I said, even if it's just somebody's asking you to do something in a way that you feel is unsafe on the work site, I need to be aware of that right away. If for some reason you happen to lose your co-op position, something's not working out, the employer decides they're going to terminate, I need you to come and see me immediately following your dismissal. Usually the employers contact me to make me aware of that situation, but in the event that they haven't done that, your responsibility would be to come and see me right away when that happens, so that I am aware and I can follow up with that employer and find out what's going on. If you're planning to leave your co-op position, which is something that we're hoping doesn't happen very often, but let's say you made a decision that this isn't the right fit for you, I'm asking for you to reach out to me prior to notifying the employer, because unless it's something that is that we've discussed, as I said, harassment, the other things that I told you to come to me about, if it's just, I'm just not loving this job here, I want to make sure that we're following the proper procedures. I want to make sure that we're giving notice to that employer so that they can make the appropriate plans. If it's something egregious, we'll work through that and we'll get you out of there as quickly as possible. But in the event that you're just not happy with that job, you just think that you want to move on or you want to come back to school, we need to talk that through, because the goal of co-op is really to get you out with an employer and have you stay with that employer beyond your high school years. So I think that pretty much covers all of the getting set up for co-op, getting out on co-op, and what to do after co-op. There's a lot of documentation that will be coming your way for you as juniors. I will be sending a lot of emails via your school email, so it's really important that you check that school email frequently. I see here that somebody says
Take a break for 1
carpentry is
second.
not being allowed to do co-op. That is not true.
Correct.
I am not sure where that came from, but that is not true. Everybody is allowed to do co-op. I will say there are a few career areas I struggle with finding positions for. They're a little bit harder for me to get placements for, but I'm working on that. I'm getting out there. I'm meeting with new employers. I just met with 2 brand new employers that we haven't worked with before, not brought to me by a student. They reached out to me, so they were looking for co-op students. So I am getting new requests and I am working on that every day. So
I
trying to build that
couple more,
capacity for us.
couple more questions right here. I'm going to read them to you. Are co-op positions posted? Does BayPath have partnerships with certain employers? How does a student and parents seek opportunities specific to student expertise?
Okay, so we have a new platform this year. It's called College Central Network, and you're probably thinking, college, what does that have to do with co-op? So this was originally designed for college students, and the applicability, they soon realized it crossed over into secondary education, which is what we are as a high school. And many vocational schools in the state have started using this platform. What it does is it's a connection platform that allows our employers to post jobs out there that are available, and students are able to search those jobs as well. I will say, currently, I don't have a large volume posted there. And I don't have a large pipeline, but what I do have is employers that I have strong relationships with, that they are always asking for our students. So if I have a student who's struggling and is looking for something, I can reach out to those employers. We are also, I'll plug this right now, we're having a career fair. April 11th is the date for this year. And that is a place where students are going to be able to connect with employers that are looking to fill positions. Let's see.
Another question we have here, if we could, if you have over 3 absences per quarter, will your co-op privileges be taken away?
So if they're unexcused absences, if the student's calling in to work frequently, that might be addressed by the employer even. But if they're calling in to work frequently, or if they're absent from academics quite frequently, we will call you down. We will place the student on a probationary period, which is what I also do with academic grades. There's a probationary letter that will go out. It will notify you that you're being placed on probation. You have a certain amount of time, which is usually the midterm of the next marking period, to make improvements for that. If there is an improvement in that, then we will talk about suspension or removal from the co-op program.
Great. Does auto tech co-op student have to be 18 to go on co-op?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. That's not a problem. That's part of the child labor laws that are specific to vocational students. It gets them, it grants them some availability to be out in that industry as well.
We'll open the floor right now. If anybody who has a question, want to raise their hand and come in and talk to us, you can do that as well, or go through the chat. Those are some great questions. And I know it's new to parents and guardians and caregivers. So at the end of the day, it's our hope and our purpose to get every child an experience in their career field prior to graduating. So the more we can get there, the better it is for our programs and our students' trajectory. So that's exciting news for us.
And I will say too, the co-op experience provides workplace experiences, as you can imagine, that you can't always think of when you're working in a shop setting here at the school system. Prior to becoming the co-op director, I taught in a classroom. I tried to create scenarios, but you can't create a scenario for everything that you're going to encounter when you're in an industry. You just can't do it, no matter how hard you try. There's always something that's going to come up that's unexpected, and that's great education for the students.
Another question that just came in, students must have their own transportation to and from their place of employment, correct?
That is correct. They need to have a reliable source of transportation. I'll give you for instance, I had 2 students asking to carpool to the same employer. I did have to deny that, and here's my rationale behind that. If the car breaks down, if the one student is ill, if one student may end up terminated, and I know that's a horrible thing to say, but if any of those scenarios happen, that employer is now down 2 employees, not just the one employee, because there's no guarantee that that secondary student who's dependent upon that ride is able to scurry and get themselves a last minute ride into work. So I do discourage that. I don't encourage that we try and have carpooling to the same employer, but if students are able to find reliable transportation to and from work, you know, whether it's a parent that has the ability to get them there on the route, then that's, you know, that's a great thing. And we can, and as long as it's reliable, we can move with that.
Do employers provide feedback for school/parents? Reason how student is doing?
Yes, so this time card that I mentioned is the employer's ability to provide feedback. A little more insight into that time card. The student starts the time card electronically. They put in the hours that they worked for each day that they worked, and then they check off what we refer to are the Massachusetts frameworks or the competencies that they worked on for that week. And then the employers give them a grade. They also have a place, they are not required to comment, but they're encouraged to comment, whether it's positive or negative, to provide some feedback to that student. Typically, if I see any form of negative feedback, I will reach out to the employer and ask them if they've had that discussion with the student first, because I feel that's a very important piece. You need to have those lines of communication. I wouldn't want to find out that I'm being marked as something bad on my time card without ever hearing it before. So I do reach out to those employers and have those conversations with the employers as well.
Next question. My child is not sure if they completed OSHA certification. Should I reach out to the teacher?
Student can reach right out to me directly and I can figure that out for them. That's not a problem at all.
Next question. Will you be sending information out to parents? We'll resend this broadcast out again, but I also think that we'll be sending out information that'll be pertinent to the whole process as well. Am I correct with that assumption?
I can certainly send that out to parents. Parents can also access the information out on the Bay Path website under school resources and co-op. There's a checklist that shows you what the process is for the students to get placed out on co-op. There's also a handbook out there that goes over in detail all of the things that I've just covered today. So you have access to that whenever you would like to reach that through the website, but we can definitely work on getting that emailed out as well.
Next question. For those who struggle academically and struggle with MCAS, what are their options? No co-op? ?
So it would be a case by case basis. I definitely would want to work with the guidance counselor with regard to that particular student. And if you have a student in that situation, I would love the opportunity to work with them and see how we can get them over that line. It might take a little bit longer than the February timeframe, depending on what we have, but I would love to work with them and see what we can do to get them over that line.
We also have a student support team that's monitoring students who are in academic danger and providing supports collaterally for them to be successful, whether they're through interventions or through help with the teacher. We're on that. We're watching that. We're monitoring that closely. The number one responsibility for all students in public education is their academics first. We want to make sure that they're getting proper access to everything they need. So we will not let kids fall through the cracks, but we have to have students meet us as well with their personal responsibilities for learning to meet the criteria to be out on co-op? That's a really good question. And I'm glad that you asked that. And if your child is struggling in any capacity, reach out to me or Mrs. Coleman in regards to getting any type of support or interventions. We will provide anything in our power to help kids be academically successful. Next question. Do students need to have a car and a license and a car? We already know transportation they need. So a license is also needed as well?
A reliable source of transportation is needed. It would depend on so students aren't allowed to drive cars on the road, so to speak, for their job. So having a license, unless the employer requires it as a condition of their employment, I haven't run into an employer telling me they had to have a driver's license. It is a question that's asked on the form, just so we understand if the student does or does not have a driver's license. But the other question is a reliable form of transportation, and that's the main thing. Can they get back and forth to work reliably every day?
Next question. Do the employers need to be in collaboration with BayPath, or can students reach out and find their own place of employment on their own?
Students are actually encouraged to find their own place of employment. But we do have employers that do collaborate with us. And especially for some of those areas that maybe you've got a connection, family, friend, church affiliation, group affiliation of some sort, you might already have a contact. And if you've already got a contact, then you're ahead, one step ahead. And we welcome new employers. Again, there's a whole process I go through with new employers. I need to go out and I need to visit where the student's going to be working. I look at all of the equipment these students will be working with to ensure that we're putting the students in a safe working environment, as much as we can control, obviously. We're not there with them 24/7 when they're working, but we do go out and ensure that we're getting the students placed in a place that has the equipment needed.
Next question, and I love this question because it's embedded with financial literacy. Do many employers offer retirement options to students? And I love that, thinking about the future. But
so there are some that do offer benefits to our co-op students, and others offer the benefits upon graduation when they become full-time employees. So it varies from employer to employer, and I don't have a full list of employers that are offering full benefits upon hire at the moment. Being my second year in and only second quarter into this year, there are some things that as I go along, I'm finding I want to get more, I want to capture more information. Just as I've been trying to capture information from our students, things such as, do you have reliable transportation? So that if that's a hindrance, we can look at if there's anything that we can do with our community to try and work that through.
we're circling back here. Did you say that the resume is something students have been working on in school already?
So I will say that is a shop by shop basis on when they start working on that resume. Some shops start super early in the sophomore year, some start a little bit later. If there's a shop that a student hasn't started working on a resume, as I had indicated previously, I would be more than happy to start working with that student on the resume. There is actually a resume builder right within this College Central Network program that we're utilizing. It's pretty much you type in the information and it formats it for you. So students don't need to be super proficient in a Word or Google Doc in any way, shape, or form. They just type in the necessary information and it will format it all for them.
Next question, how are IEPs impacted? And I can answer this a little bit. Your IEP is a access to equity and fairness in education for academics and any other school experiences that we have. IEPs themselves generally from the workplace, Mr. Turd, they don't cross over into the workplace. I don't believe. I'd have to look into that to see, because you're not doing academics, you're doing performance-based tasks that they're being paid for.
So if there are specifics that might have an impact on the student's capacity at the workplace, and the parents are in agreement with sharing information with the employer to help that child be successful, there is a place where we can have them check that information off on the forms, and I can share that information with the employer. I can tell you, I have several students that are out that do have IEPs, and they are completely successful without me even having to share any information relating to their IEP. They are really doing a great job out there.
And there are workplace requirements that employers have to adhere to for anything that there is physical or, and again, from the cognitive lens, generally speaking, the academic rigor in school is different than that of the workplace. But if it comes to anything that's other than that, there's always room for discussion about how we can make that work collaterally with employers. The next question that we have here is, I know they need reliable transportation to get to co-op. For electrical, do they need a driver's license, or is there a disadvantage to not having a driver's license?
I can honestly say I haven't encountered that in the 1.5 years that I've been doing this role, where I've been notified of any disadvantage for a student not having a license, or that I've been presented with a student who didn't have a driver's license yet and was, having any kind of a challenge with a co-op position. But I can certainly, if there is a situation, I can work with that employer. I have no problem working with an employer to see if that's going to present a challenge.
Great. One more time. For athletes, generally, do employers accommodate the students having to get back to Bay Path for practices and games?
Okay, so that's a great one. We do have a lot of employers that do work with the students that are athletes. What I do tell the students, if they're in athletics, they need to make sure that they're upfront with the employer about that. Let the employer know what seasons they play in, how much of an impact they think it's going to be on their daily schedule, because they still need to obtain those 30 hours. That's still a requirement that they have to meet. As I said, that's a DESE requirement. They have to meet the minimum educational requirement. So if they're having to leave, extensively early to make it to their games, their practices, those types of things, they need to find a way to work within those confines with their employer to make sure they're still getting those hours in.
How often does the employer need to grade the student on their work?
So that would be on a every other week basis. So it's every week that they work for the employer, they would need to grade. So it is a daily grade that they will receive, and a daily effort and a daily conduct. So at the end of each week, they will give them a grade for a numeric grade, an effort, and a conduct, and then any comments that they have that go along with that.
If school is canceled due to snow, are they still required to go to work? Unless it's a state of emergency, you got to go to work. Welcome to the real world.
So we do say that the expectation for snow days and for vacations is the student would work. Here's the caveat to that. If you don't feel as a parent that it is a safe environment for your student to drive in, if your student does not feel comfortable with that, that is for them to work out with the employer. I don't mediate that. That is up for the student to work with the employer with regard to, our number one concern here as a school system is student safety. So I can't force and say, you have to go to work. That is for you to work out with your employer and have those discussions with your employer. As far as the school breaks go, again, that's another employer and student conversation. Some employers allow the students to take the break because sometimes that means that the student would then have 2 weeks worth of work back to back, and financially the company doesn't budget for that. They only budget for the every other week. So they may say, go ahead and take that break. I don't know too many students that insist on taking their breaks off because once they start earning the money, they want to keep that money coming in. So they try and work as much as they can. So I hope that answered the question, but we are anticipating they're now in the work world and that they would be going to work even on a snow day. But again, you have to make that judgment call. Just as an adult, you may make that judgment call that I don't feel safe going into work today. I may need to call out, but the expectation is you're expected to be at work on the days that you're scheduled.
We have one more question here, and it's from a student. Can I, as a student, choose any location of my choice for that specific trade? For example, I am an automotive tech. Can I choose any shop of my choice to work at, or am I limited to the selection of locations BayPath already works with?
Nope, you can choose a place to work for. Again, they need to meet the criteria and be in agreement with the criteria that we set forth as a co-op employer. I need to go out and do that site visit, but if everything checks out from the site visit and they're in agreement with meeting those co-op requirements in terms of the hours, the grading, the query check, site visit, we can get you set up wherever. You know, I've had some students go out and apply in Littleton. So I've been out to Littleton, Mass to go check out a site.
Would the 30 hours include breaks of work?
So when we talk about 30 hours of work, typically it's not including your breaks. Some employers, if you're working your 30 hours, they have you take your lunch within that 30 hours. So it should be working hours. When I do talk about lunch breaks is because I had this happen a couple of times this year. Student puts in that they worked 9.5 hours. Well, child labor laws say you can only work 9. They were putting in their half-hour lunch break as an inclusion of that number of hours that they were working. So that comment needs to go down into the comments that the 9.5 includes their half-hour lunch break. So that way there, if we have an audit, we can explain why we went over that required amount of hours.
Mr. Strachura, could you speak to the point of students working on academic week after school? Is that something that is acceptable practice for students? Or are they just limited to their shop week for any employment hours?
Okay, so they are not limited to their shop week. Their shop week would be the only thing that would be considered co-op hours though. So on that academic week, they would not be submitting a time card for me for grading or to the employer for grading or submit it to me for review. Again, they need to work within those confines, those restrictions that are set forth by the child labor laws in terms of end of shift and all of that. But they're free to work on those academic weeks. The only thing I will advise is they need to make sure that they're keeping up with their academics, because if those do start to slip, then we're at risk with the whole academic, the whole cooperative education program.
Thank you. When can we pick up the information packet that we need our employers to complete?
So that is all done electronically this year through that College Central Network platform. If you already have an employer who says they want to take you on as a co-op student, and you already know that, you can start doing that form over break. And that's why I scheduled this meeting just before we got to the Christmas break, because it's a great opportunity for you to start looking for employment. It does take a little while. As you can imagine, we usually have a mad rush of a whole bunch of students looking to get out. If they're new employers, it does take me time to get those site visits scheduled. So there is sometimes, and I'm sure you've heard it from some of the upperclassmen, sometimes there can be some delays. And that just depends on how many applicants I have and how many visits I have to get out and how many visits I have to do per week and what I have for time constraints. But if you already know that, you can go right out to the College Central Network link that's out on the co-op website for BayPath, and you can put in that application now if you already have that employer lined up.
And one more question. With whom should the student, parent, or guardian work to seek cooperative employment placement if the opportunities are not known to the parent, student, or guardian?
So certainly, if you're not sure where to even start, the first thing would be to put in an interest form, a co-op interest form. for the student. The student can do that right through the BayPath website again. It's only accessible to students with BayPath accounts. They would fill out that form. I would meet with them. I can certainly do some outreach to our industry partners to see who might have availability for the students. And worst case scenario, if there's somebody, I don't have somebody, I can start to do some more outreach in the community as well.
Okay, I'm just reading the last one here. I just want to make sure I understand it. What happens when the school year ends? Will the kids get, I don't know what that means, the same co-op as next year?
Okay, so typically what we do is we encourage the student to work through the summer. And as I said, once students start earning money, they enjoy the fact that they're earning the money and don't take the summers off. Let's say the student or the employer say, okay, we're just going to stop for the summer. Most employers do start that co-op right back up the next year. Excuse me, I apologize for that. So they would start right back up that next year. It used to be that we would get some new forms filled out. This will be a continuation if it's with the same co-op employer. What would change is if they go to a different co-op employer, then we would need to start the process all over again. And that needs to be clearly stated that anytime there's a change of employer, we start that whole process all over again for co-op.
Some really good information being shared here tonight. Listen, if you have any direct questions, I'd ask you respectfully to reach out to Mr. Chura or Mr. Tripp or myself. We will get you those answers as soon as possible. I will reiterate the fact that it's our job to get your children into the field of their choice as quickly as we possibly can. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say, please make sure your kids are working on their academics and staying current in everything that they need to do academically to keep those doors open. Okay. Again, this is a great school, and I'm finding out things here that just, they're unbelievable opportunities for kids around every corner. We want to continue to build upon that. But the main reason they come here to school is to get those critical thinking, problem solving skills and the academic backgrounds that they need to be successful. They will work the rest of their life, but I'll tell you what, we'll provide the platform to make them as solid as we possibly can. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I don't see any other questions at this point in time on the either the question and answers or in the chat. So I am going to stop the recording.